When it comes to WandaVision on Disney Plus, Marvel gives us a lot of firsts. It's the first Marvel installment where a center focus is on a romance. Another first is that it's a mystery. WandaVision is a fucking mystery, but it's also a bit of a sitcom for half the season. I also argue that WandaVision is Marvel's first attempt at a character study in a way, and specifically tackling a darker subject matter or more mature subject matter like dealing with grief and loss and how you cope with the feelings left of losing someone that you love. It really steps outside of the box of the traditional MCU formula that you normally find in their Marvel movies. Now, despite a couple hiccups along the way throughout the series, I gotta say that this was a great show. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I was fucking impressed, and I was excited every single week to watch it and tune in and then talk with people throughout the week and speculate what's gonna happen. It reminded me, honestly, of the fanfare that we found when watching Game of Thrones on a week-to-week schedule and speculating where it's gonna go and what's gonna happen, the excitement, the community involvement around that. Now, this review will be divided into a couple different sections. I'm going to start with my general thoughts around it and the accessibility to general viewers, giving very non-spoilery thoughts and what I liked of the show. And then I'm gonna segue into more spoiler discussions as I dissect my favorite parts of the show. I will give plenty of warning, and there will be chapter times in the description below. When it comes to the accessibility of this show to general viewers, WandaVision does require a little bit of homework because there are so many characters and elements that do tie in to past MCU films. So if you ask me, I'd say there are about 5 movies that you probably should see in order to make sense of the most essential parts of WandaVision. And those movies, in chronological order of how you should view them, are Avengers: Age of Ultron, Captain America: Civil War, Avengers: Infinity War, Captain Marvel, and then Avengers Endgame, because they will give you the character introductions and story elements that really play the biggest part in setting up WandaVision. Now, as for my general non-spoilery thoughts on the show, I love that it was a mystery, I love that it was a romance, and it was so fun week to week to peel back layers of the mystery as it unfolded. It made it exciting. It gives you something to speculate. It gives you something to talk about. It has some of the best MCU acting I've ever seen across their entire universe. Also, it gave us one of my favorite MCU villains ever introduced. There were some supporting characters and some dialogue on the side that didn't quite land as strongly as it should have, but the main key characters at the helm and heart and soul of the story were incredibly strong from start to finish. Some people might have frustrations with the pacing and the unraveling of the mystery, but I felt that it kept me actively engaged week to week, and each episode gave me enough excitement to build that anticipation even more, and it is definitely going on my list of being one of my favorite MCU properties ever introduced to the universe. So that is my quick non-spoilery synopsis of what I thought of it. Again, the chapter times are going to be below if you want to skip to the time where I give my final grade rating of the show at the end. So here is your final warning, because the next stretch of my review, I'm going to cover some spoilers. Now, heading into some semi-spoilery territory, having finished the show, I want to talk about something first, and that is fan speculation versus the Marvel simplicity formula, because I think this show, though very well done, might irk some fans for various reasons, because this show is such a mystery and only peels back maybe the tiniest of layers with each episode to where you're left with days and days between each episode as the show progresses to speculate, assuming they were going to do a pretty faithful adaptation from comic to screen, which it certainly did not. There were many story elements that I think fans probably blew way out of proportion and wondering where this was going to go. And it kind of can set us up for disappointment, because what we can speculate will happen, when it doesn't happen, does it make it a bad show? Does it make it a cheap move by Marvel? So with that being said, with how great this show is in so many ways, I think it will disappoint some people, because the MCU as it is very simple. The MCU is not known for taking risks, like hardly ever. They tend to play it safe, and WandaVision definitely stepped out of the box in several ways, but it didn't step too far out. It took the ideas within this universe and it kind of reeled them in a little bit and gave us glimmers of what it was without giving us the full cake. So even though there are some frustrations with what the show presents compared to what the fans were saying it could present, I do think the show stuck the landing in the end. So let's talk about Wanda, played magnificently by Elizabeth Olsen. This is her show. Yes, it's called WandaVision, and it is about Wanda and Vision, but in terms of the standout performance, the actor that I think will get the most possible award recognition for this, the character that I think fans will be talking about more after the series is over, is Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch. After this show, Wanda is now my favorite MCU character, which is saying something because I've always loved Elizabeth Olsen as an actress, but her character, at least what they've given her character in all of the films leading up to it, she had some moments, she had some good scenes, but they never really gave me a whole lot of time with her and a whole lot of moments to really get me to be a huge fan and care a lot about her. But now they gave us WandaVision, and not only is Wanda thoroughly explored and really expanded upon as a character, but Elizabeth Olsen gives the most dynamic performance of a character within the MCU to date. This character is dealing with so much trauma, and this show gave Elizabeth Olsen a platform to really dive into that, and boy, oh boy, did they nail it. Also, I loved her amazing Scarlet Witch look. Oh my fucking god, I loved her final look. It was amazing. I also need to give credit to her counterpart in Vision, Paul Bettany playing Vision, and he did also an impeccable job. He's such a great actor. They play off each other so amazingly, and they have impeccable chemistry. We also have to talk about Monica Rambeau, who is a breath of fresh air and a wonderful new addition to the MCU. She was just so charismatic. I loved every time she was on screen. I never got sick of her. Tiana Paris completely impressed me with how she handled this character, and I can't wait to see more of her in the MCU. And then, of course, there's a character that has become an internet entertainment industry sensation from this show, and that is Kathryn Hahn as Agatha Harkness. Kathryn Hahn doesn't need to prove to any of us that she's an amazing comedic actress. From the very first episode, she was always a scene stealer. She was always incredibly charismatic, so engaging. Kathryn Hahn as Agatha Harkness has become a household name and universal meme. She is definitely one of my favorite villains ever introduced into the MCU. She's one of those villains to where you kind of want to see her win because she's so fucking fierce and funny, but formidable at the same time. I still loved the show from the first episode up until the very end. I feel like the slow peeling of the layers and reveals of characters and plot elements. And like I've said before, Marvel hardly takes any risks, but they took so many risks with WandaVision. The black and white sitcom to like 70s, 80s, 90s style sitcom. It's very strange for a Marvel property, but I love that Marvel took these fucking risks. It didn't feel like another MCU movie that kind of just blends together with the rest of them, as half the Marvel movies kind of feel to me. I love that I had no idea what the fuck was going on for so much of it. I haven't sobbed during any other Marvel movie or MCU project. I've teared up, I've cried, but I haven't sobbed. And this fucking show killed me by the end. Overall, the ending felt natural, it felt organic, it felt earned. The ending itself was fucking epic as hell. It felt thrilling, but I was very much satisfied with how these characters ended up. Even if other things were tied up in ways that you weren't satisfied with, the core of the show, the title of the show is WandaVision. It's about Wanda and Vision, and I was so incredibly satisfied with how they tied up their story. Now, I've had mostly really good things to say about this show, but there were just a couple things, a couple hiccups along the way that I wish kind of would have been polished up a little bit more. The dialogue and scripting within all of the sword agents and their supporting roles. Now, they aren't the sole focus, obviously. I'd say they're about 20% of the pie. 80% of it is everyone else with Wanda, Vision, and Agatha that I thought was impeccable. But I feel like with the sword agents, specifically some of their interactions, some of their dialogue, it felt a little bit the most like the MCU formulaic interactions that haven't really impressed me. There were a number of moments of humor that didn't quite land for me. Randall Park as Jimmy Woo, great actor, great comedic actor, but I wasn't entirely buying his character's performance the entire time, or there were a number of lines and jokes or scenarios that just kind of played off a little bit more silly than I would have liked. Another antagonist known as Dr. Hayward in the movie, he kind of just felt like a typical MCU douchebag to me. He didn't feel nuanced or interesting. Also, some of the line deliveries from a couple of the child actors didn't quite land as well as I would have liked. And I know it can be incredibly challenging when with child actors. I feel like half the time they're great, half the time maybe not so much. And another hiccup is just to be careful in the speculation and the fan theories out there. Like Evan Peters, who shows up as a fake Quicksilver, people speculating he's from the X-Men Fox universe when he wasn't. That was completely thrown out. That didn't bother me because I didn't think that he actually was from the Fox universe, but a lot of people I think are going to be understandably pissed that it felt like Marvel was kind of trolling them. Another is the multiverse. There's been lots of hints that Wanda is the reason the multiverse even opens, and it leads into Spider-Man 3 and then Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness, but there's hardly any mention of that in this show. Kind of like how Thanos was teased in Marvel movies. I think people were expecting that maybe another big overarching baddie was going to be introduced on this show, and they weren't. Marvel still kept it simple. They did step outside of the box, but they had maybe 1 foot outside of the box, maybe a foot and a hand, but they didn't fully step outside of it, and I think some people will be disappointed because of what they could have done and where they could have gone. So overall, this show was incredibly enjoyable. The pros heavily outweigh the cons, and even though it wasn't picture perfect with a couple things I would have tweaked or fine-tuned throughout, the heart and soul and core of the show in Wanda and Vision, but especially Elizabeth Olsen, was so groundbreaking, so wonderful, so well realized, that made me that much more exhilarated to actually see where these characters are going to go. And even though they didn't take all of the risks that I think they could have done, they still stuck the landing on the risks that they did take, and I applaud them at the end of the day for this show. I'm going to give WandaVision an A-. And that's my review for you. You can watch the entire season of WandaVision currently on Disney+. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and opinions, so feel free to share those down below. Be careful of spoilers. Maybe label your comments as spoiler if you are going to talk about something specific for those that haven't seen the show. As always, thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Ryan Bamey, signing off. Bye, everyone.